Hello, my name is John, and today we're in the cockpit of the MiG-21Bis again. In this video I want to show you how to use the RSBN to construct the big and small box. Both of those boxes are used to approach airports, flying the standard traffic pattern. Currently we are a couple of kilometers out of Sinaki airport, and we have to set up the aircraft first. First thing we want to do is to set the RSBN and PRMG channels. For Sinaki, both of those channels are 14. As you can hear and see with the lights and the sound beeping is that we now receive the station, so we can turn down the volume a bit so it doesn't get in our way. Also, we want to make sure that the 3K curse needle is set to runway heading, which currently it is. Also, we would want to put the RSBN into landing mode by moving the switch here down. And that's all the setup needed, and everything else I'll tell you on the fly. So let's unpause and fly towards the aircraft. So, the standard approach using the RSBN big box starts off with overflying the RSBN station at an altitude of 600 meters and at a speed of 600 kilometers per hour. Currently we are just a bit above that and a bit faster. So we'll pull back the throttle, push down the nose gently, and slow down and descend to the desired altitude and speed. And the RSBN station is currently 7 kilometers out, as you can see, and just a bit on the low side. That's good. A bit on the fast side, but we'll slow down just in time. Okay, here we go. Now in any moment we will overfly the RSBN station, which is the start of our procedure. In this video I will fly a right hand big box because there are mountains in the way for the left hand big box. But you can do the big box to either side you want, or ATC would you advise you to do. So currently we have overflown the RSBN station, as you can see on the NPP with the RSBN needle turning around. Now we want to head out for 7 kilometers away from the RSBN station, and 7 kilometers is the distance for the big box. If you want to fly the small box, which is the same, just smaller, as the name suggests, is that you head out 5 kilometers. So we're currently 5 kilometers out, 2 more kilometers to go before we perform our first turn. Now let's just wait until that comes up. Okay, 7 kilometers coming up. Now let's perform our first turn, and we will perform a 90-degree turn at 45-degree bank, which is the standard turn rate for the big box. We want to make sure that we keep our altitude and speed throughout the turn, and we also want to make sure that we fly a nice 90-degree turn, and we can use the 3K curse needle we set to runway heading to make sure that we have performed a 90-degree turn. And that was more or less a 90-degree turn. And now we have to wait for the next turn. And we can see when we have to do the next turn by looking at the NPP instrument. As you can see, the little 2 on there, the mark with the 2 on there, means that we have to perform the second turn once the RSBN needle is right next to that mark. And that will come up in a second now, and here it comes up. So that means we have to perform our second turn here. Again, performing the turn for 90 degrees at a bank angle of 45 degrees, trying to keep the altitude and speed. Okay, now as you can see again on the curse needle, we're flying opposite runway heading, meaning us to level out. And now on the crosswind part we want to descend and slow down, and we want to descend to 500 meters and we want to slow down to 500 kilometers per hour. So we will do that by throwing back pulling back on the throttle a bit, and also opening the speed brakes for a brief time. Okay, altitude is good now, speed will come down as well, which is good. And once we are directly abeam the airport, indicated by the RSBN needle being directly horizontally, we will drop down the gear, which will slow us down further. Okay, that's about right now. So let's extend the gear, and I also like to extend the landing lights right now, which I have done. And now we just want to make sure that we keep our altitude and speed, not descend, not slow down. Quite a lot of power required on the MiG. And now we wait for the next turn, and while we wait, we will look at the RSBN or onto the NPP, and we will wait until the RSBN needle is right next to the 3 mark. And the 3 mark in this case indicates the 3rd turn. Okay, we're a bit on the fast side. I'll reduce power a tiny bit, and the next turn should come up in a couple of seconds or so. As you can see, the RSBN needle is getting closer to the 3 mark, which means that the next turn is imminent. Okay, that's good enough. We will initiate the 3rd turn, again performing a 90-degree turn at a bank angle of roughly 45 degrees. That was a bit on the far side, but again, oh, never mind, sorry. Leveled out a bit too early there. Quite perfect. But yeah, again, let's look at the 3K curse needle until we get our 90-degree turn. And now we will just wait until the RSBN needle is next to the 4 mark, indicating the start of the 4th turn. And once we perform the 4th turn, which I will not perform at that high of a bank angle, because it's normally not required, because you're a bit slower. Once we performed it, we will wait for the PRMG to come online and give us guidance for the final approach. Okay, 4 mark is coming up while I'm talking away, and yeah, let's perform the next turn. And I will not perform the turn at a too steep of a bank angle. 30 degrees should do it. And now, as you can see, the PRMG comes up, and I will increase the bank angle a bit, just to make sure that we can get ourselves nicely aligned with the runway heading. Okay, we're a bit off to the left, but we can easily correct that. And now, being on final approach, I will drop down the first notch of flaps, which will slow us down further, and slowly, once being slowed down a bit more, start with the descent. And I have now set 25 degrees of flaps, and I will put the flaps out fully once we are over the outer marker, which is noticeable by the blinking light and the tone. Okay, and the only thing we have to do now is to fly our approach. Short landing check, gear extended, flaps at 25, landing lights are on, and all good. Our final approach speed will be about 340 kilometers, and I try to initiate the flare with about 320 kilometers per hour over the runway. Okay, alignment to the runway looks good. We have the needle more or less aligned in the center. I'm coming a bit flatter than the PRMG tells us to, but the flatter we are, the easier it is, and we are not too far out of approach parameters, so that should be fine. Okay, we have the outer marker now, which means full flaps. The aircraft is slowing down now further, below 360 kilometers per hour, allowing the SPS to come online. Now we will look at the runway visually, keep our speed, add a bit of throttle to keep the glide slope. And once we touch down, we will engage the parachute and roll out. That was the inner marker, or the middle mark. I will keep the power until touchdown. Okay, here we go. Parachute is extended. Now just wait for the aircraft to decelerate until you can drop the chute and roll out off the runway. I'm not using any braking here, it's not really required. The runway is more than long enough, so that's fine on my side. And yeah, that is how you use the RSBN to perform a big box approach, which was something a lot of you requested, or at least some of you requested. I hope you could learn a thing or two, and if you have any more questions or you want to see any more vids on different topics, just let me know in the comments or send me a message. Thank you very much for your attention and have a safe flight.